Dosing is one of the most challenging parts of modern herbalism, and it's often one of the most overlooked pieces of modern herbalism.
Two practitioners on one side saying 250 to 500 milligrams. I got another practitioner saying 2 to 30 grams. And then I have all these books with every dose in between.
I'm willing to put myself on the line to have these conversations to do it. And in order for herbalism to have a seat at the table, it has to be effective.
She was on 30 grams of ashwagandha, so she's taken like 5 tablespoons of ashwagandha powder a day. Welcome to Herbalism Uncensored, the podcast where we dig deep into the world of herbalism and natural healing. I'm Alicia.
And I'm Lila. We're two clinical herbalists who recognize the need for honest and authentic conversations about the state of natural healing today. As practitioners, we feel called to have uncensored discussions about why people aren't finding relief and what to do about it.
If you're frustrated by lack of results, overwhelmed by conflicting advice online, disillusioned by the commercialization of wellness, or simply passionate about natural healing, you're in the right place.
This podcast is our way of cutting through the noise, busting myths, and challenging marketing gimmicks.
This is Herbalism Uncensored,
where together we're nurturing the future of natural healing.
The contents of this podcast are for informational purposes only and are not intended to be a substitute in any way for professional medical advice, treatment, or diagnosis. It's important that you always seek the advice of your physician or other licensed healthcare provider with any questions or concerns you may have regarding a medical condition.
Welcome back to another episode of Herbalism Uncensored. Today, we are talking about the so controversial topic of dosing.
Dosing. Well, I mean, it's complex. I don't know if it's controversial. I think we make it controversial.
Well, we're going to get hate comments, Alicia.
Yeah. People, okay, so like trigger warning. You feel like the doses of the herbs that you are taking are inadequate. And, hey, man, it's not personal. It's just, that might be correct.
Well, and I think...
Your face.
All right. I don't know how that's going to be received, but I think what happens is we are Herbalism Uncensored, and we named it that so we could share our opinions, which aren't always popular.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's got to do that kind of work. But we have had a few comments on Apple. I'm outing our Apple listeners, where people, I think, hear something and it upsets them because it challenges a worldview or a way that they were educated or the way they do things. And we're just giving our perspective, what we see, what works clinically, and the problems we see, and what you do with that information, I think, is up to you. But I understand why it does stir the pot. Like, some of these things are not what everyone else is doing or thinking.
Well, and this just came up for me like yesterday. I think, I don't know what the universe is doing with me, that I'm in an alternative space. Like, I'm in the space of alternative wellness. And in every area in that space, I feel like I'm in a space that's going against the grain. And then I'm in that space going against the grain. But
this is why we get along, by the way, because yes.
I just want to be really clear that I'm not, none of this is anything that I've come up with on my own. None of this is something that I bring up to cause conflict or controversy. All I do is share my experience and stand in the convictions of what I've been taught by my mentors who came before me, who have much more experience than I do. I had a client yesterday who asked me about some yoga. She wants and she's virtual. She wants some yoga instruction before she goes and does studio yoga. We had to have a whole conversation about how, if I give you instruction on yoga and give you some basics on yoga, basically what I'm going to teach you is how to do down dog and chair pose and child's pose and up dog in a way that's completely different from what the yoga instructor at the studio is going to instruct you. But I'm going to instruct you to do that in a way because I believe it's the best thing for your body, because my experience has proven that And that's what I've learned from my mentors who have more experience than me. And it's kind of the same thing for me with the dosing.
I think you're on the same page with me, but like part of the mission isn't just to, Alicia and I help people with their health and that aspect of things, which is really cool and rewarding. But I think the other piece to what we do is we have to start having these conversations if we want the world of herbalism to be respected and have a seat at the table. I think herbalism is behind the ball. It's behind acupuncture. It's behind naturopath. And at the end of the day, it is also the thing I think that solves so many of the health challenges we're having as the people right now. So we have to have conversations that are pushing the bounds and making people think critically and observing these things, or the whole practice of herbalism just continues to die out. Like, I want herbalism to have a seat at the table. I'm willing to put myself on the line to have these conversations to do it. And in order for herbalism to have a seat at the table, it has to be fucking effective.
Oh, wow. Yeah, she's serious.
Sorry.
She's dropping
Sorry.
the F-bomb. But I mean, but yeah, it does. It has to be effective. It has to be effective. And I mean, dude, you made me think of something, because it's not so much that like herbalism is behind naturopathy or behind acupuncture. Like, herbalism is a large part of traditional Chinese medicine. It's hard to find a traditional doctor of Chinese medicine that practices a lot of herbalism. It's hard to find an acupuncturist who uses herbs. They are out there, but they are definitely the minority. They're definitely not the majority. And herbalism is part of naturopathy, but like effective herbalism is not a part of naturopathy the way it was 50 years ago.
No, and when I say that herbalism is behind, I mean, I think the systems are there, right? Ayurveda is the oldest medical system on the face of the earth today. Like, the system's there. What's behind is herbalism having a seat at the table. Herbalism being a household name. You go to your herbalist when something's wrong. I think the herbalism has a marketing problem. It has a marketing problem, and it has a bit of a dilution problem in the amount of people that are practicing herbalism in a certain
Did you
way.
say dilution or delusion?
I said dilution. Like, it's
Dilution,
diluted
okay.
because you can't tell the difference between somebody who does clinical herbalism like we do, or somebody who forages and makes products, or somebody who does community herbalism. Like, we have a clarity problem.
But that's the whole point. We had a request to talk about dosing, because we did an episode where we talked about tinctures and tincture dosing and effective tincture dosing. And we use this term a lot when we're talking about dosing. And the term is therapeutic dosing. And I think that's what inspired this. We had a comment from someone on Spotify who was another practicing herbalist who said, can you talk to us about what the therapeutic dose is and where do you get therapeutic dosing? And it was just it was such a loaded question that we felt like it deserved an episode.
It's a great question, by the way. Thank you to
Yeah.
whoever asked it. Absolutely fabulous question.
And so, it's like and we talked about this a little bit before the episode, when I say therapeutic dose, what I mean when I say therapeutic dose is that I am trying to elicit a response from the body. So whatever that response is, if I'm trying to, stimulate an AM bowel movement, or reduce a fever, or reduce someone's anxiety by 70%, or enable them to sleep through the night, or how about like stop involuntary nerve impulses that cause hands to tremor. Like, whatever the response is we want to create in the body, like, what is the dose that's going to get us there? That would be the therapeutic dose.
Yeah, we do say that a lot, and I appreciate the clarification. To take a half step back, I think just it's worth saying that dosing is one of the most challenging parts of modern herbalism, and it's often one of the most overlooked pieces of modern herbalism. So one thing that Alicia and I do that I think is probably more on the rare side than the not is we use big doses. We use doses, like Alicia said, that are getting therapeutic effects, that are eliciting a response in the body. And that is a different methodology than a lot of practitioners adopt. But I will tell you, it's effective, and the people that work with us get results, and I don't like to argue with results.
Yeah. So, I mean, when it comes to dosing, I mean, we take a lot of things into consideration, right? Like when I'm thinking about what a therapeutic dose is for a particular person, there's just a lot of things taken into consideration because texts vary, traditions vary, preparations vary, plants vary, the people vary. Because I've got 6 different textbooks that list the same herb. They all give a different dose for it. We've got traditional Chinese herbalism, Ayurveda, Western herbalism are going to use different doses and different preparations. I have to think about, am I using whole herb or capsules or tea? We talked about doing a whole nother episode on preparations. We did the tincture episode, and we can talk a little bit more about that. And the plants vary. Some plants are more potent. Some plants are really medicine-like that you need to use them in low doses, or else you can have some really undesirable effects. Then other things are more food-like, where you can use them in super high doses and get some amazing results. And then each client is different. We're Ayurvedic practitioners. I have to think about people's agni, their digestive fire, how they metabolize and assimilate things. Because if I have someone with like a really high digestive fire, they're going to need higher doses because they're just going to burn it all up. Then they're going to need higher doses than somebody who has like a really slow, methodical digestive system.
Yeah, that's really well said. And I think where we lose people is the dosing isn't always, oh, you have this, take 2 capsules before bed. The dosing is very person specific, situation specific. What part of the healing journey? What are you trying to do? Are you in maintenance? Are you in a loading dose? Like you said, there's so many factors. And how most people are trained to think about taking medicine is, I get a prescription bottle and it says take 1 capsule. Like the individual piece of it really, I think, throws people through a loop. And I know you mentioned this before the episode, and it's something you do and it's something I do too, is we dose to effectiveness, or we dose until you get a side effect, or we dose until bowel tolerance, right? Like people are given kind of, some range and some guidance, but they have to kind of tune into their body to figure out what dose is the correct dose for the situation. And I think that is so foreign to a lot of people.
Well, absolutely. I mean, do you think about anything, whether it's a prescription medication that you pick up from the pharmacy, or a bottle of Tylenol, or your wellness formula that you get at Whole Foods? Every single one of them has dosing on the back, It's going to say take 1 to 2 tablets every 6 to 8 hours. There's not this huge range, where I do that a lot with people. I have the first thing that I explain to my clients when we go over a protocol is I have these 2 terms that I use: 2 effectiveness. That means this is the effect we want, and we're going to continue to increase the dose until we achieve that effect. And then we have 2 tolerance, and that means that we are going to continue to increase the dose until you have a side effect that doesn't feel good. And then we're going to back the dose up, and then we find that that's your dose. And this is for, I think that you had touched on this, like acute versus chronic dosing, or loading doses versus maintenance doses. And I think that this is where a lot of other like modern herbalists are going to disagree with me, is that I think that a lot of what modern herbalism is doing is putting people on maintenance doses
100%.
when they would benefit greatly from a loading dose, or they're on a maintenance dose when, the maintenance dose isn't necessarily what I would call the therapeutic dose at this moment. That maintenance dose could be the therapeutic dose down the line in a couple of months or in a couple of years. But if I want to elicit a response quickly, high doses are going to get the better response.
Yeah.
And Like, and we get like kick ass results. I'm thinking about the client that I had that was so agoraphobic. She wouldn't leave her house. She couldn't drive on the freeway. She couldn't get a job. She was afraid to take her daughter to the park. Had like set up an outdoor play area in her apartment, fenced in patio. Knew that it was good for her daughter to go outside, but was afraid to like leave the house. And we got on ashwagandha, the whole herb. I think that's also important. We made a note to caveat this, that when we're talking about, if I mention any herb doses in this episode, I'm talking about the whole herb, not an extract. But she was on 30 grams of ashwagandha. So she's taken like 5 tablespoons of ashwagandha powder a day. And a week later, she was getting out of the house. She was driving on the freeway. 2 weeks later, she had gotten a job. She was driving on the freeway daily. She was going to work. She was taking her kids to the park. And she asked me, am I going to have to take like all this ashwagandha forever? And I was like, no. We can slowly, over time, we'll slowly decrease the dose. But we got her out of the house, and we got her out of the house pretty quickly. Like, she had the crippling anxiety went away.
That's an amazing story, first of all. Which is so cool. You're not going to find anybody talking about taking 30 grams of ashwagandha at a time. People will definitely have opinions on that. I also think that's kind of dosing you do with a practitioner, and I know you did other things as well. But it really exemplifies how powerful herbs are when you take the time to do saturation dosing, right? Where you are saturating the body and, maxing out the dose and getting results quickly. I think when people, one, are taking small maintenance doses and they're not getting results, it's really hard to stick with it. It's really hard to keep doing it if you cannot make a connection that this is making me better. And I think that's where a lot of people fall off the natural route because they think it doesn't work, when really your dose is probably wrong, or, it could be other things. But that is one of the main challenges I see with people is the dose.
Well, I mean, it's like, flashback to an old episode where we did when it was like 5 reasons that your herb isn't working. And it's like wrong dose, wrong herb, wrong preparation. These are some of the reasons. But if you've got the right preparation at the right dose, then like you get results. And that's the thing that, we continue to say this, or I continue to say this. I don't want to speak for you, that it makes me really sad whenever I hear someone say, like, I tried to take herbs and they don't work. And so the person who's, taken a gram of ashwagandha a day for their anxiety, and I've talked to people who say that it helps with their anxiety to take 1 gram of ashwagandha a day. That's great. But maybe theirs isn't as severe. Maybe they have better assimilation. Maybe they're doing some other things that work synergistically with it. But there's, when someone's taking a gram of ashwagandha a day for their anxiety and it's not working, and then they say, oh, this just isn't going to work, that makes me sad.
Well, it is sad because then they either have to go back to Western medicine that's most likely letting them down in some way, or they don't find help. And I mean, that's definitely something I feel passionate about, is when herbalism appears ineffective, somebody loses the potential to find their path to health and happiness. And I think that we all deserve that at the end of the day. And it's important to me that people experience like what this field has to offer. And I know that's important to you too. I want to talk about like why dosing is such a conundrum, right? And you mentioned earlier, like you can pull up 6 herb books and they're all going to have different dosing. And they're all still probably going to have an adequate dosing. And, I actually felt like this was a bit of a bitter moment on my herbalism path, was when I realized, like, I can't trust the books. Like, you think like you have this book, and like I remember the magic of like the beginning of like, you think you have this book and you read about all the things that are possible in this book, right? Like, you go to an herb and it's like, take a teaspoon of burdock root and fix any skin problem you have. And then there's like this shatter moment where you're like, wait, this is not reality. These books do not translate into clinical practice. I'm not saying every book. I'm just saying a majority of herb books out there are not necessarily made for clinicians, not necessarily made for lay people. They fall into this weird space. Publishers get their hands in them. Nobody's publishing real doses. It's this whole thing, and it actually was a little sad, if I'm being honest.
Well, I mean, yeah, the book on your nightstand, that herb book, it was edited by lawyers, not herbalists. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. That you could have a highly effective practicing herbalist write a book, and everything that they say about the herb will be correct and true. They tell you about the properties of the herb, the constituents, the actions of the herb, how they use it clinically. But then, yeah, you can't trust the dosing, because whoever is publishing the book is concerned about our litigious society.
Yeah. Which is unfortunate, but they don't tell you that when you're reading the books, you know? They don't, there's no disclaimer that says this
They don't
dosing
tell you
is
that. They
is
don't
not
tell you that.
real.
And I mean, and I think it's just so wild, like the vast difference. Like I have a document pulled up, and I'm just gonna give like an example of, okay, here's what's a good one. Haritaki. We talk about Haritaki a lot, right?
Oh, it's one of my favorite herbs.
Okay, so I got it. Yoga of Herbs by Dr. Laud and David Frawley says 250 to 500 milligrams of Haritaki. That's the dose in that particular book. I got another book right next to it, Ayurvedic Pharmacology and Therapeutic Use of Medicinal Plants by V.M. Gotke, 1 to 6 grams. And then I could jump to the other end of the spectrum where Ayurveda, The Divine Science of Life by Todd Caldecott, 2 to 30 grams.
Yeah.
So I got one, like two practitioners on one side saying 250 to 500 milligrams. I got another practitioner saying 2 to 30 grams. And then I have all these books with in between, with every dose in between. So did you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, and there's nothing that's distinguishing what that dose is trying to accomplish, right? Like we know that we have this herb. We know this herb does all the things. And are we maintaining? Are we loading? What are we doing? There's no distinction.
Well, and I think that this is where, like, and I might be jumping off topic, but I think that this is why it's so important for practitioners, for clinicians, that we meet regularly with other clinicians and discuss these things. Because I've got resources that are telling me that I could do anything from 250 milligrams to 30 grams. And this is a plant that, is mildly laxative, that can be used for any kind of vata disorder, that removes fear, and it has a yoga vahi action, and helps other herbal medicine, gets where it needs to go. So that's fantastic. It does all of these things. Like, what dose do I need in this particular situation? Like, it's really important, I think. I know that it's been really indispensable for me to have colleagues who are also working with people, who are also participating in continuing education, and discuss these things.
Colleagues, I think, are absolutely important. Learning from people that are in practice, mentorship, and not going to herb schools. Well, hold on. Before I say that, I want to say, like, every person on their herbal journey might be in it for a different reason. But if you are looking for, effective dosing, learn from someone who's done it in clinical practice. Like, there are so many herbalists out there that are extremely famous and popular that have never done anything clinical, which actually kind of blows my mind, because, like, how are we saying these herbs work in this way and do all these things, but we haven't validated it with people?
Well, again, I feel like I want to answer that question.
Go ahead.
Because so I was talking to somebody recently, and I'm gonna like Rosemary Gladstar. Somebody came to me and they said that they thought they were going to they're thinking about signing up and learning more about herbalism, and Rosemary Gladstar is starting she's doing a training which she hasn't done in a while apparently, and dude, like, I love Rosemary Gladstar. Like, when I listen to her, like, first off, she's like the godmother of herbalism in the United States. Like, we owe her a debt for the awareness and the love of herbalism that she evokes and fosters and nurtures. And it's like feel good herbalism. Like, you listen to Rosemary Gladstar talk, and like you just want to go and like grow and harvest some herbs and like get your hands in the dirt and be one with Mother Nature. So that's all fantastic. And I don't think that she's really worked with in a clinical setting. I haven't been able to find any evidence that she has worked in a clinical setting and worked with a lot of people. But I can speak for myself that, like, as someone who gets out there and gets my hands dirty and harvests herbs and makes preparations out of herbs, that like I know what these herbs do for me. I have a lot of really good evidence about what each plant in my garden can do for me, and what each plant in my herb stores in my closet can do for me. But the thing is, what they do for me and how they do it for me and what dose that's necessary for me to get that response is different for other people.
Yeah. Like there's just it's almost just like there's nuance missing from the conversation.
Well, you say that all the time.
Because I think a lot of nuance is missing from a lot of conversation.
Well, there's a lot of nuance and there's a lot of complexity, and there's just really no one size fits all answer here. But
no, this is a complicated subject.
It is a complicated subject. And and it changes so much. And then the other thing is, I'm just going to go back. I'm like picking on the Haritaki because it's just so easy. If I do, here I've got 250 to 30 grams. Like, what am I trying to do with this Haritaki? And then also, like, what do the classical texts say? Like, what were they doing with Haritaki 3,000 years ago, before there were lawyers?
Well, and I think Haritaki is a great example because I use a lot of Haritaki in practice, and it's all like I never give a dose for Haritaki. It is to tolerance, to elicit a response that I'm looking for. And so I think that's a beautiful example, because for one person, it might be on the lower end of the spectrum. On another person, it might be on the higher end of the spectrum. But if you go through and you read a book like The Yoga of Herbs by Dr. Laud and Frawley, which is a great book. There's a ton of really good information in there.
It's such a wonderful book.
It was a pivotal book for me. You start reading about all these herb doses, and you think that the doses in the book would work for what they're telling you these herbs do. And so when you realize, like, oh, well, one, you think if it's in writing, I would think that if it's in writing, like, there would be a reason not to go above that dose, right? Because you don't know where the bounds are, the limits are. And if you see 250 milligrams to 500 milligrams, you think 500 milligrams is the upper limit. And that's what you're going to, that's what you're going to use, as I'm not supposed to go beyond this. But herbs are a feedback system. There is no magic dose across the board. There's no, in every situation, this is the dose. Like, it's all the things that Alicia said earlier. Who's the person? How potent is the specific strain of this herb? What are the criteria happening? And how do we take all this information and distill it into something standard in a book? Well, you can't.
You can't. Exactly.
So where do Alicia and I get our dosing? Mentorship, lived experience, clinical practice. Like, there's no resource I could point anybody to, and I wish I could, because I wish I had that. That would be freaking amazing. If there was a place to go where, like, the dosing was reliable and I could understand how far can I take this herb? How far, should I not?
Looking up the dose of Haritaki in one of the classical texts for the purpose of Vatu Analoman. And it is 1 karsa, which is about 10 grams.
I'm actually curious what Todd Caldicott's doing with 30 grams of Haritaki, because
Purging?
purging
Then
like
this would be a
childhood trauma, like that is deep.
Well, and there you go. Here we're talking about, it's like, oh, Todd Caldicott's talking about using 30 grams of Haritaki. That's interesting. I'm thinking of like the amount of peristalsis that would happen with 30 grams of Haritaki in a 24-hour period. And Todd Caldicott has a weekly or a monthly roundtable session where you can meet with him for an hour and a half and do Q&A. And that's like totally something that I think would be worth doing.
We should write that down to talk to him about.
Yeah. And well, and we were just talking about this Wednesday because you and I had a meeting on Wednesday and he does it on Wednesdays. And I'm like, the only reason I haven't done it is because I've had a meeting on Wednesday because I want to continue to meet with mentors and meet with colleagues and discuss these things to find out what the best thing would be for people. But yeah, there's no like one place to go. I think that originally this question was brought up in regards to Hawthorn. I think that the Hawthorn was the one that really like, we're talking about Haritaki a bunch of this episode, and we talked a lot about Hawthorn in the tincture episode. And I mean, and tincture, Hawthorn it's a berry, man. It's like really food-like.
Yeah, we talked about using hawthorn berries with 30 grams, which I've gotten higher. And somebody did not agree that it was appropriate dosing.
It was appropriate dosing, and I think that's where we were talking about the therapeutic dose, because the whole thing with tinctures, and I was just looking at, because I know you wanted to talk about.
Oh, you want my side tincture rant?
Yeah, well, I mean, so tinctures, I'll just start with this, that if I need to find the therapeutic dose of a tincture, I'm going to have to do some arithmetic. Because a good tincture, a well-prepared, well-labeled tincture should have a ratio on it. So we should know if it's like 1:5, 1:4, 1:2. We would have to do some arithmetic to find out with that. For example, a 1:5 strength tincture, 20 grams of dried herb actually lands in 100 milliliters of tincture. So that's about 3 ounces of tincture is 20 grams of herb. A 1:4, you got 25 grams in 100 milliliter of finished tincture. So that means that like about 3 ounces of tincture has 25 grams of the herb in it. And so it's another added layer of math that has to be done to figure out how much tincture do I need to take to get a therapeutic dose. And maybe I'll just say, and you might disagree with me, Lila, maybe because the tincture's in alcohol, and alcohol is a yogavahi, alcohol helps the herb enter all of the tissues faster, the dose might not need to be as high as it would be if you were taking the whole plant without alcohol, but it's not as low as the common conception is.
I think it depends on what you're trying to do with the tincture. I don't think it's necessarily black and white. I think certain herbs, it's an alcohol. It's going to be quote unquote absorb better. It's going to get into the bloodstream quicker. But if you're using a tissue building herb, that's not going to do anything. You need X amount of that herb. And the thing that I keep coming back to about tinctures is the tincture will never be greater than the amount of herb it starts with. No matter how potent your tincture is, it'll never be more potent than the 30 grams of chamomile you started with. You have 30 grams of chamomile, that's it. That's what your tincture is. And so I get stuck on that. Yeah, I think tinctures act a little differently in the body. I think people do argue that they're more potent or a better absorption rate, but I don't necessarily agree, especially because not all constituents of any given plant are alcohol soluble. And I think our digestive system does a great job. If you're like, well, water extracts these constituents, alcohol can extract these constituents, your digestive system can extract all constituents if it's operating good enough. I don't know. There's nuance to that conversation, but what my gripe is with tinctures is that nobody gives a tincture ratio. And I did
That's a problem.
I did some continuing education recently, and I think I had high expectations for what I signed up for, and this herbalist was giving dosing for tinctures, and there was no tincture ratio, so 10 to 15 drops of a 1-to-1 tincture of a certain herb is going to be a lot different than 10 to 15 drops of a 1-to-10 tincture. Like, we're talking the difference between multiple grams here. And in certain herbs, that's going to make a big difference. So what just like astounds me, and I haven't figured out what I'm missing yet, is how are we talking about tincture doses without talking about the tincture ratio?
Yeah, that's
Burm,
just
burm.
things that make me go, I don't understand.
I don't understand either.
If someone has an answer, please respond to us in the comments or send us an email, herbalismuncensored@gmail.com. Yeah, how are we figuring out tincture doses without knowing how much herb is in the tincture bottle?
Yeah. Well, and I'm so afraid that the answer is, oh, we're traditionally folk method making tinctures and we don't know the ratio, and having the herb in our body is good enough, because I see dosaging is really confusing, but it's also overlooked in the sense that people just think having or taking an herb is enough. How many people have you talked to? They're like, oh yeah, I take turmeric for inflammation, and they're taking a capsule of turmeric. Or I take hawthorn berry for my cardiovascular disease, and they're taking a capsule of hawthorn berry. It's like, for some reason, the connection hasn't been made, and I'm gonna blame the herbal marketing team that, we have an education deficit, which for so many reasons. I'm not blaming anybody. It's just, it is the state of things that we think just taking the herb is enough. We don't consider how much. It's
Well,
like, I will eat a leaf of spinach and get all the nutrients from it. Like, no, I have to eat a certain amount of spinach to get the nutrients from it.
Well, I mean, you get the nutrients from one leaf of spinach when you eat one leaf of spinach. I mean, that's how many nutrients you get. The nutrients that are in one leaf of spinach.
One spinach leaf's worth.
And so, when you eat a whole bunch of spinach, if you eat 100 spinach leaves, you get 100 times the nutrients. And I think everyone can agree that we need more nutrients than exist in one leaf of spinach if we're trying to get what spinach has to offer.
Yes. Now I have a hard-hitting question for you. I have my
I'm
opinions,
ready.
but I'm gonna tee you up for this. So if we look at older naturopathy, loading doses were the standard. They were the norm. Everybody was using big old doses, not just with herbs, but even with supplements, like loading doses with supplements. Giant amounts of vitamin D and vitamin C were being used, big old doses of magnesium, big dosing, highly effective practices were going on decades ago. But now we are in a landscape where people are not using this kinds of dosing. Why do you think that the big dosing's fallen out of favor in such a dramatic way, not just with herbalism, but naturopathy?
You really want to know my opinion? Because I'll go like full-blown conspiracy theorist right here.
Okay, I can always cut it if it's too much.
Well, I mean,
I'm just kidding.
I think that there is a problem when the government, this is my true answer. A lot of people in the government make a lot of money off of the pharmaceutical industry. I think that naturopathy schools are now funded by the government. Anything where you can if I can get government funding to go to this school and this school can get government funding, then the government has its hand in it and it is not in the government's favor for us to be effective with natural medicine because they can't make a bunch of money off of it. That's my honest opinion. And I think that it's happened over time, and they've just that the education has been, dare I say, watered down, and also there's the liability aspects of things because like as a natural practitioner, we were talking about this before we started. Like, we were talking about just like the effort and the energy that goes into building a career in this field, and like, dude, every day, every moment that I talk to a client, I open up my mouth and like I risk everything. I'm just walking right on the line and exercising my First Amendment right. And there's a lot of risk in using natural therapies with people because if something goes wrong, if you've got somebody who comes in who has a kidney infection and you don't refer them immediately to send them immediately to the hospital, or if I have somebody who's having a blood pressure crisis, and I am perfectly capable of like checking someone's blood pressure and giving them some herbs to help them get their blood pressure down. But if I'm not able to do that quickly or effectively and they stroke out, like, I'm done. So this becomes I think it's a liability issue that people are afraid to use the loading doses to get the results that they could get because of the consequences that we could get if we don't refer somebody to a medical doctor or a medical institution, because like that's what all the rules and regulations tell us to do
Yeah.
in crisis situations.
Well, and I know you don't treat crisis, and I don't treat
I don't
crisis
either. No, I don't. I mean, I
for
say
good
that
reason.
I had a client last year who called me, and she called me in a blood pressure crisis, and I said, you have to go to the hospital. And she was really disappointed, but I mean, that's the best that I can do with somebody who's in a crisis situation.
Yeah. Well, and to unpack a couple things there. One, I don't I how do I want to say this? I don't want people to think that like the things we're doing, the doses we use are risky, because one, we're not working with crisis situations by choice, but two, um I think a lot of people are risk adverse because they don't know how these things work, and there's a lot of fear that's crept into the field because we haven't been learning from people with a lot of wisdom and mentorship, or people that grew up when these loading doses were the norm. So I think that just on the whole, like you said, the litigious, the fear, like on the most part, the things we are doing, while risks are possible, there's always risk with any medicine. I think on the whole, herbs are still much safer than any drug out there.
Oh, well, and that's what, when I say I'm taking risk, I don't feel like the herbs are risky
Yeah.
at all. I mean, if I get too passionate and become unclear, I mean, but like these, and I think what you're looking for is like when we talk about these like loading doses that were so popular and like have become controversial, because like we use a lot of loading doses. I know that I commonly, and you as well probably, commonly use loading doses of magnesium. We use
Mm-hmm.
loading doses of vitamin D. I teach my clients to take doses of vitamin D that if they Google Google will tell them it's toxic.
100%.
But it's a loading dose. It's done for a short period of time to increase their vitamin D levels because they have symptoms that are indicative of pathological vitamin D deficiency, and they've got a lab test that says their vitamin D is 21 or 43, which is normal, but they still have all of these symptoms of vitamin D deficiency. It's like, let's get the vitamin D dose up. And one of the reasons that this is so controversial is that we don't do any studies on it.
Right.
Any of the studies that are done on natural therapies are done with low doses, and they do it with low doses for reasons of to make it less expensive. They do it to improve the compliance of the people that are in the study. So the studies that are done with maintenance doses. And when they do the study, they're not expecting a result of any kind. They're just expecting to show some results, and they get some results, and they get the results that are positive with a maintenance dose, and they go, oh, well, the maintenance dose is great. But they never do a study on the higher doses. Like, nobody's running a study to take, 50 people with anxiety and give them 30 grams of ashwagandha to see how they compare to somebody who takes a gram of ashwagandha. No one's doing that study.
You're 100% right about that. So just tying it back to, what we do is I don't know, I wish I had a better word than risky, but like as a clinical herbalist, you do operate in a gray area. And I think part of the issue is there's no clear path to licensure, which is ironic because we know what the government puts its hands in isn't necessarily going to be better or more beneficial. But at the same time, licensure would offer, I think, a lot of ability to take the fear out of things like this, out of dosing, out of using certain higher risk herbs, out of just a lot of the problems that we're seeing. It's a bit of a conundrum, but I think the fact that herbalists don't have licensure or a clear path to practicing is part of the reason that there is fear in the way people are practicing and teaching and being taught, and the way that we're writing herb books and the dosing we're publishing in herb books. Like, we are sticking our head out on the line. You and I are sticking our head out on the line by having these conversations. And not everybody has the fortitude for that. Unfortunately, you and I do. So here we are.
Here we are. And I mean, it's like I'm always waiting to, get canceled or ostracized from
This might be the episode
community.
that does it, by the way.
Well, and that's, you know what? Look, I just get up every day and, and I pray and I ask the universe to shine the light on my path. And I don't ever open up my mouth to say anything other than what I believe to be the truth. And I'm not going to do anything differently because I've got to look at myself in the mirror every day and I have to operate with integrity. So I came to terms a long time ago that I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Some people don't like me, and that's okay. I am gonna touch on, like, I agree with what you say about the licensing. It's like so tricky, right? Because I don't, despite what some people may have heard in past episodes, because I think I made a comment in an early episode that I'm for licensing. It's like, no, I don't want my profession to be regulated by a government entity. But I also would like there to be some path that maintains the integrity of my profession. Because, I mean, dude, I live in Houston, Texas, where, like, there's so many healers walking around, people who are, like, self-styled healers. That's what they call themselves. And, I mean, you talk about a gray area. They're, like, operating, like, beyond the gray area. And I've seen some things that are just like people suggesting that people ingest essential oils that I know, like blue tansy essential oil. Don't ingest blue tansy essential oil. It's toxic. Don't rub straight blue tansy essential oil on your 5-year-old. That's toxic. And so I've just seen some things that people do and kind of like advertise, and I know that there are other places where there are people who can practice like we do with a sense of competence. Competence is definitely the word. Yeah, I mean, because we live in an area where, anybody can grow anything in their yard and make a tea out of it, and they're an herbalist. And I've spent many thousands of dollars and years of my life acquiring the knowledge that I have and learning how to use it.
I think this is a topic that you and I are both very passionate about, and I think that can come off a little spicy, but I want to reiterate how important this is, because the better we get at dosing, the better we get at herbalism and making it effective and making it more accessible. But what I'd really like to do, as we are kind of approaching time, is wrap up with a couple just really practical dosing tips that we can give people. Like, what can they take away from this episode that will help them right away be more competent in this area?
Oh, do you have some dosing tips?
I was waiting for you.
Well, I mean,
I know one of the ways that you and I both practice is we titrate our dosing. We use a dosing methodology where we introduce herbs low and slow and have people work up to full therapeutic doses over time, because everybody's set point is different. And the other thing I think is really important to mention, I meant to mention it, an hour ago, is whenever you're reading or talking about dosing, we're talking about dosing for a standard 150-pound adult. If you weigh more than that, you will have to use bigger doses.
Yeah, if you weigh 300 pounds, then it would be like double the dose.
Yeah. If you are a child that weighs 75 pounds, it'll be half the dose.
Half the dose. There you go. And then also, and thinking about like the herbs, like where we're finding, if you're thinking about what the dose is, like just a general rule of thumb, the herbs that are used in traditional Chinese medicine tend to be the least potent, have the highest doses. It's not uncommon for an herb in traditional Chinese medicine to be anywhere from like 15 to 90 grams. We're getting up into the 60, 90 gram range. We're talking about for acute situations. But for maintenance, it's not uncommon for a maintenance dose to be 10 to 20 grams. And then in Ayurveda, the doses get a little bit lower. but are still pretty much on the high end. And Western herbs tend to be, I guess, perceived as more potent, and the dosing tends to be a little bit lower. I'd say like the average dose for most Western herbs with our like super um, unconservative dosing perspective would be, I'm thinking like just like 5 to 10 grams, right? Like most things, it seems like it's about 5 to 10 grams for Western herbs,
I don't agree with
sometimes
that.
more.
I don't agree with Western herbs being I mean, okay, like let me just think of like the 10 most common Western herbs off the top of my head. Hawthorn berry that we talked about, chamomile, calendula, nettle, mullein, coltsfoot.
Oh, see, you know what's funny is like
Dare I go on?
the only one of those that you just named that I ever use is the hawthorn, which like to me it's a berry, dude. It's very food like. So I mean, for me, hawthorn, depending on what I'm trying to do with it, I'm like anywhere from 10 to 40 grams.
Right. It's such
But
a spectrum because there's Western herbs that I'm like a drop, and then there's Western herbs at 60 grams. Like it's all over the
but I'm
place.
so like when I think of like the top like 5 Western herbs, the things that I'm thinking of are like lemon balm, golden seal, Oregon grape, burdock. But I don't know, burdock's kind of like a Chinese herb, isn't it?
And burdock still,
Yellow
you're
dock.
yeah. See, I think you're still using big.
You're
Cool.
still using big doses with
I
this
mean,
one.
lemon
Because
balm,
I
you're
mean,
still using 30 grams.
and yeah, now that I think of it, because I mean, yeah, lemon balm, you're still using 30 grams. Golden seal, which, like, by the way, y'all don't use golden seal. Just like if you're using golden seal, stop. There's not going to be any more golden seal left if you keep using the golden seal. And if you're buying your golden seal on Amazon, I'm not even sure it's golden seal.
Well, okay, what can they use instead? Berberine, Oregon grape, goldenrod.
There you go. A more cork bark. Like these are very similar. But I mean, I used to use golden seal before it became like an endangered species. And I mean, it's amazing at like 14 grams a day.
I
Still
don't use golden
pretty
seal because I can't
decent
afford
dose.
golden seal.
Well, that's why people can't afford golden seal. But I mean, I know that there are because I'm kind of like involved in some crunchy moms that are getting a lot of herb information on the internet, on Facebook, and on YouTube. And I know that there are people, there are herbalists out there that are recommending that people do things with golden seal. And I just want to put a little PSA out there that that's outdated information. We're going to use up all the golden seal. It's a really good medicine, but we need to let the stores replenish because it's been overused. And there are other things that we can use instead. I would really like to do an episode on sustainability because I think there's a lot of things out there that are being used quite a bit by laymen, that we should be conserving.
Yeah. Well, oh yeah, we could definitely. That's a whole other conversation I think we could get into. Um, One more dosing tip I want to leave people with is cross-reference multiple books, multiple
Yeah.
sources. Make sure some of your books are written by clinicians, people in clinical practice, and start looking at the dose range and see, check against 6 books, see what's the lowest dose, see what's the highest dose. And I think self-experimentation is great if it's done conscientiously, but always, go slow. Know what herbs are toxic and poison and what herbs you can't push. I think that's a very big part of it.
Yeah, I think that if you're planning on, if for some reason you think you need to use something that's toxic or filled with a bunch of alkaloids, um, yeah, don't do that kind of stuff on your own. I don't do that kind of stuff on my own.
You know?
No, I mean, well, like anything that I'm going to take that like might have some real adverse effects, like I at least discuss it with you.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not just over here like taking mixing calamus and bacopa together and seeing what happened. Like when we
Right.
started doing this, we were discussing these things with each other and comparing.
Gosh, I feel like there's so much more I want to say because we do talk about mega dosing, but then it's like mega dosing that's relative to that herb. Not every herb is a 30-gram herb. There's herbs
Hmm.
that pushing the dose on it really is like multiple drops of tincture, and it's just such a spectrum. See, there's so much nuance here. How do you talk about it all in an hour?
Well, I think you don't talk about it all in an hour. This is something that, Lila, like, just look back and think about like all the books that you've read. Like, we've read a lot of books. We've sat through a lot of hours of lecture on dosing and on formulation. Like, we didn't even talk about that I might have an herb depending on, you know, because I guess there are people out there that are just taking one herb, but most people who are taking herbs for their health are taking several herbs. And, one herb is going to be taken at a high dose because it's like this is the main thing that's going to fix the thing. And then I have other herbs that are assisting and other herbs that, like, maybe I take something that helps to harmonize or increase circulation to help everything go where it needs to go. And depending on what the herb is doing in that hierarchy of the formula, it's going to have a different dose. Like, we've sat
Right.
through, we've spent many, we spent many hundreds of hours studying these things. There have been many, many books that have been read and many lectures that have been sat through, and then a lot of trial and error and
And
discussion of findings.
internships and
And
case studies and
yeah, internships and case studies and mentorship and it continues on. So this isn't something that we can talk about in an hour, but I think that this all started because someone was asking about like this a therapeutic dose. Where do you find a therapeutic dose?
yeah.
And it's going to be different in each situation. It's going to be each different for each person. It's going to be different with each herb, and it takes some digging.
100%. And I hope if one thing is taken from this episode, it's that dosing is complicated. It's one of the hardest problems we as clinical herbalists face. So if you are feeling unsure about dosing, like, just know it's literally one of the hardest pieces of herbalism.
Yeah, we're not pharmacists.
No.
We're not working with something. Yeah, it's just plants are so much more complex than pharmaceuticals. And the dosing aspect of things is more complex.
Yeah. And like I said, I wish there was a magic resource I had or I could point people to. Like, I wish it existed, but I have been working on for 4 years now my personal dosing reference sheet. Like, I just from picking it up and practice and like mentors and what my colleagues are doing. Alicia tells me she took 60 grams of Asaka, and I'm like, whoa,
Did I
you
take
know,
60 grams of Vasaka?
probably.
I probably did. My lung needed some TLC after the mold toxicity. My
Well, I remember
goodness.
that being shocking because Sebastian Pohl's dosing for Vasaka is like 0.3 to 1 gram or something. And it's
Is
just like, again, this is another thing that like I had to figure out and work with if I was going to use this herb is what is the true dosing here, you know? Oh yeah,
yeah.
he's got a baby dose for that one.
Well, and however much Vasaka I took, like, I mean, Vasaka is a lung tonic and it dilates the bronchioles. And I had mold in my house and felt like I couldn't breathe. And, I know that I've taken, I feel like Vasaka, like a good dose, like a good acute dose for like you're having some issues breathing right now would be like 20 grams. And I know from consulting books and things that I've learned and working with this herb is that like one possible side effect could be low blood pressure. And so, if I take 20 grams and still not breathing great, then yeah, I might take 10 more and keep taking 10 more. Um, like every hour or so until I feel like I can breathe right and just like kind of watch for signs of low blood pressure. And if I'm not getting tired or woozy, I'm good.
Yeah. Well, I think we're pushing up at time. Maybe we'll have to
We
do
are.
part
I
two or
hope.
something. Or if I wait, I hope you didn't walk in more confused, less confused. I don't know.
Well, dude, I mean, this is where we're going to get some comments that say we're condescending and not helpful and don't offer solutions. But then, I think that we have offered some solutions and shared some experience here. And
Maybe you and I need to put together a dosing masterclass
mm,
that could be shared.
you need some
I'm
sunglasses.
listening. I mean, current.
people who aren't watching the video, Lila, like the sun is setting in Washington State right now, and like Lila's just the sun is in her face.
I don't live in Washington, by the way.
Where are you now?
I'm in Oregon.
You're in Oregon. Well,
And the sun is setting in Oregon. It's probably setting in Washington too, though, to be honest. You're probably not wrong.
anyway.
I just want you to know where I live.
So I guess to wrap things up, guys, like dosing is not one size fits all. It's not one herb fits all. The digestion matters, the people's constitution matters, the herb you're taking, the preparation you're taking matters, the goals matter, the thing, whatever it is you're trying to achieve, all of these things are going to affect what the dose is. So if you want support choosing the right herbs and the right dose, you can book a consult, or like look out for our dosing masterclass that's coming up.
We're doing it. Links in the bio, masterclass coming soon.
All right. Well, Lila, thanks for diving into controversial topics with me. It's always fun to do this with you.
You're very welcome. I'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for listening, guys. Next week, we're going to do our spring episode. So I know there are people looking forward to that one. Y'all have a great day. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Herbalism Uncensored. We're genuinely humbled by the love and support you've shown us. If you've been enjoying the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review if you feel called, and don't hesitate to reach out. Whether it's with a question, a success story, or a topic you'd love us to explore in a future episode. And remember, both Alicia and Lila, that's me, run virtual clinics. We'd love for you to check out what we're up to. You can find Alicia's practice Holistically Correct at holisticallycorrect.com, and you can learn more about my work at the Virtual Natural Healing Clinic by visiting tvnhc.com. Until next time, be well, stay grounded, and keep healing.